Hello and welcome to Diminishing Returns. This week we are dipping our toes into the Marvel Cinematic Universe waters for the second time in an ongoing attempt to cover every last entry in the far-reaching franchise. We're doing Guardians of the Galaxy, which is one of the most popular Marvel films to date. Obviously, with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 out very, very soon, it seems appropriate. Calvin had a bit of trouble with his audio this week, so please do forgive the slightly iffy audio quality at certain points when he's speaking. Do rest assured that things will be back to normal next week, but I do think this one's particularly worth listening to. There's some really great pitches at the end. It's just generally quite a good episode. Pretty pleased with how it's turned out. As always, there are some incredibly minor spoilers, so this episode contains spoilers for Guardians of the Galaxy, Parks and Recreation, Fatal Attraction, Star Trek, The Usual Suspects, Labyrinth, The Muppet Movie, and The Sooty Show. Enjoy! Hello, it's Diminishing Returns. This week we're doing Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a huge film series, even though it's only one film deep at this point. But the second one is out soon, and everyone is apparently really excited for it. So we're taking a stab at it. Guardians of the Galaxy. We've only done the Marvel Cinematic Universe once before, haven't we, with our Iron Man episode? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
For that, we started at the very beginning of the Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
So we only really focused on that film. We didn't really talk about much what came after.
So we're jumping ahead today to Guardians of the Galaxy, which was part of Marvel's Phase 2. We'll get to the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in due time, I'm sure, but yes, for now we're focusing on Guardians of the Galaxy. So I'm Sol, as always, and with me today are Calvin, who you just heard then. Calvin?
Yes, that's me. That's me. And I'm not always Calvin. Sometimes I'm Cynthia. Just because you said I'm Sol as always, as if other people don't do that, as if other people aren't always that. I'm really tired. Like, this is not going to be a good record. Anyway.
Okay, and also with me is Mr. Alan Turing. Not that one, the other one.
I'm not always Alan Turing, actually.
Right. Oh, did you know that this film that we're talking about today is now retroactively referred to as Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1?
Is it?
Not in my house.
Yeah, that can piss off.
This is like World War One all over again.
Star Wars is Star Wars, right? You can forget all the A New Hope bullshit. It's Star Wars, and Raiders of the Lost Ark is Raiders of the Lost Ark. You can forget all that Indiana Jones and Indiana Jones presents the... Fuck off, Indiana Jones. It's Raiders of the Lost Ark. Live, die, repeat. Fuck off, it's Edge of Tomorrow.
So, Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, it's hard to think, we all grew up in a time before the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I think most of us probably still knew...
Oh, the heady days of the past.
We all kind of knew who Captain America was, who Iron Man was. We knew of these superheroes, didn't we?
Well,
Did anyone know about Guardians of the Galaxy? Because I certainly didn't.
Well, it's a very recent property. I think the comic book only started in, like most of these characters were started in the 50s and the 60s, or... In the case of some, DC characters, Batman and Superman, the 40s, Guardians of the Galaxy, the comic book franchise, only began in 2008.
2008?
The same year Iron Man, the film, was released.
Well, that's impossible.
How's that impossible?
Well, it can't be that new, surely, can it be?
Why not?
Well, for one thing, Stan Lee's credited as a creator of one of the characters. And he can't have done anything for about 30 years, surely.
There was a 1969,
Yeah, I think that was just something of
One.
the same name that isn't...
but this is... Oh, right, yeah, it's... Oh, no, it is kind of...
Oh, is it? Okay. Well, certainly the characters that we follow in the film are based on a 2008 comic book franchise that...
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole thing. It was a very modern series. No one really knew much about them. It was quite a surprising move from Marvel when they announced the film, because they've got all these more classic characters that people would have expected them to go to first, but they obviously just saw the benefit of doing a big gung-ho space western film that opened up that side of their universe. And
In the context of human history, why did superhumans or people with some sort of ultra powers become a sort of staple of storytelling, be that in the 40s or whenever? Like, what came before that? Like, obviously you got your ancient stories have got gods and things like that in them, but then there's a big gap. Like, Dickens never wrote about, you know, someone with X-ray vision or anything. What happened and why did that change and why did we start to
was pretty strong though, wasn't he?
I don't know. Go on. I'm not familiar with Magwitch.
You know,
From Great Expectations.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him.
He's a big tough guy.
Yeah, but it's not.
That's as much a Superman as Drax the Destroyer.
What about Frankenstein? He was a Superman, wasn't he? Really?
Yeah.
And Dracula.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, that's just the Incredible Hulk, isn't it? Rip-off.
Well, I guess how... yeah, I suppose so. I guess how you frame it is the way it goes. Because obviously, like, you would have, like, alien influences in the 40s and 50s, radiation creating superhumans, and then could someone write a dissertation about the history of Superman in fiction and send it to me?
It's the 40s really when the modern superhero begins, with the likes of Batman, Superman, Captain America, and I would expect that the war played a massive role in that, because, you know, there was literally a group of people chasing literal Supermen in a sense, and it was a concept being bandied around, not in quite the same way, but the Superman was largely born. It was a couple of Jewish guys who created Superman, and you can see that a huge deal of it, certainly the early stuff, is just this sort of vicarious fantasy almost. This kind of like, we're going to write a character who can stick up for the little guy. Wouldn't it be brilliant if there was this guy who was just invincible, who was on the side of good, who could save everyone? And I do think there's a degree of that. Captain America was much the same thing. Obviously, it was more propaganda than the other two, but it was very much this sense of, wouldn't it be fantastic if we could just create a Superman who stood and you know, and he stood for all of the values that America encompasses in this war, and fighting for good and all that sort of thing. And so I think World War II basically must have played a huge part into that, if we're talking about how these things came from a sort of subconscious desire to express something based on what was happening in the culture at the time. What I can't quite explain is the more modern boom of popularity in superhero stuff, propelling it to the mainstream, because ever since about 2001, 2002, superheroes have just been becoming increasingly more mainstream and popular. And I don't know, it's difficult. Is there anything you can think of that was happening late 90s, early noughties that could have factored into that? Or is it just special effects caught up with, the ability to put it on screen?
Yeah, maybe that's it. And just a couple of things hit right, and trends don't necessarily come out. They do come out of nowhere sometimes. They don't necessarily correspond to the larger world.
So anyway, I mean, like I touched on at the start, we've done Marvel a little bit. We've scraped the very tip of the iceberg with our episode that we did on Iron Man. But obviously, since then, it's become a huge franchise.
What, since we did that episode?
since Iron Man came out. But obviously, so we're skipping over the Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America 1, 2, and Thor 2, Iron Man 3, The Avengers.
But it doesn't make sense to talk about those when we're talking about the first Guardians of the Galaxy, because this does work. Oh, does it work on its own, actually?
It does more than almost every other Marvel film. This is the thing. A lot of your average people on the street don't quite seem to get that this is part of the same universe yet. I've spoken to a lot of people who... Yeah... I've spoken to people who...
if you watch Guardians of the Galaxy, it's not obviously connected, is it? Because it's just setting up those characters.
It is if you're paying attention, because at the end of the Avengers, Thanos is there, and he does a little grin to camera.
Yeah, but if you just sit down and watch Guardians...
And does Thanos pop up again in another film? Like, he definitely pops up a couple of times. Before we get into this in much detail, I just want to kind of explore the build-up to it a little bit, so... Because I remember, basically, I was so excited for this film before it came out, and I was very much in the minority, it would seem, because I remember you, Alan, being flabbergasted that they were making a film about a space tree and a talking raccoon. And
I was, yeah. I still am, and I've seen it now.
But I heard they were making this film, and it's, on paper, it's so offbeat. And I thought, oh, fantastic! They're just going for it. They're embracing it. And then they hired James Gunn, the guy who wrote and directed Super, that I think is an underrated little low-budget masterpiece of a film. I think Super is incredible.
Yeah, and you introduced me to that film. Got a really kooky sense of humour. It's an interesting take on this superhero idea. Very interesting film, good film. So yeah, I must admit that kind of made me think. All right, let's see what this is going.
And he also wrote and directed Slither, that I'm a fairly big fan of. Yeah, he's
Michael Rooker's in Slither, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's a good, talented filmmaker. Very interesting choice from Marvel's point of view.
Yeah, again, right. Slither was one of those films where it's kind of a horror comedy, and it didn't particularly push my buttons, but I appreciated it, and it was it's kind of offbeat, kooky kind of idea. Now, having watched Guardians of the Galaxy, that makes sense. But thinking in terms of your go-to standard superhero film, it seems like an odd choice, doesn't it?
Well, Marvel are very, very clever when it comes to their directorial choices. They've been very savvy. They've been hiring very interesting picks that have managed to, I think, give each of their franchises a fairly distinct injection of something. And they also tend to be up-and-comers who they get on the cheap. So Iron Man was Jon Favreau, who, he directed a few decent-level films before, but you're talking stuff like Elf and Zathura. Iron Man was his, in terms of blockbuster filmmaking, that was really his big breakout film. And obviously, he made his little Vince Vaughn comedies and things leading up to that.
I don't know, you say that in a dismissive way.
No, I just mean, I think I just felt that you were about to pick me up as if as if I hadn't mentioned them. And, and you can see their DNA in Iron Man. I'm not glossing over that. But then, they got Kenneth Branagh to do Thor, and...
Oh, yeah, newcomers they got on the cheap.
No, all right, but he wasn't...
I'm just going to have to just stop a second, just because I was looking up Jon Favreau on the IMDb, and his latest thing on his directing is a TV series called Young Sheldon.
I didn't know he was involved in that, but yeah, they're making a fucking... the Big Bang Theory has become immortal. They're making a prequel series. It's very upsetting for everyone with taste. Right, the newcomers they got on the cheap are James Gunn, the Russo brothers, and Taika Waititi, who's doing Thor 3, which looks very cool.
What a wonderful name.
Yeah. But they also got some pretty established people in there, Shane Black and Joe Johnston and Kenneth Branagh. But none of those are they're all people with something to prove, certainly as directors. So they're still not A-list directors.
Which one did Shane Black do?
Iron Man 3. I think they brought him on to write it more than direct it. And
yeah, I was going to say, Shane Black's known for his writing and witty repartee and that sort of thing. I mean, he invented that almost in the 80s. So that makes sense for Iron Man.
Oh, and Joss Whedon as well, obviously. I forgot about him. And Edgar Wright, before he dropped off. But James Gunn, when you look at what they've been doing, makes perfect sense, because they're investing in someone they can see has the talent and ability, and they're not going to let him, fuck it up too much because they're going to have a million execs watching over his shoulder. And in a lot of ways, the little up-and-coming directors are more easy to control and make do what you want them to do. They're less likely to stand their ground and take the franchise off into weird places. You know, Joss Whedon sort of fell out with them because he was doing that, and Edgar Wright again backfired on them a bit because he was standing his ground too much about what he wanted the film to be. The point I was making is I was incredibly excited for this film. I thought it was going to be a really intelligent, like funny, subversive film that happened to be about a tree and a raccoon, and everyone was very dismissive of it. I remember posting the trailer and people being like, what the fuck's that? Then it came out, and like overnight everyone was in love with it and thought it was the best film ever made, and it's now regarded as like this Marvel masterpiece. A lot of people say it's better than the Avengers. From the sounds of it, Alan, you are not much of a fan.
Well, interestingly, I watched this 5 days ago. I had never seen it. Wasn't particularly bothered. It's not really my genre anyway. I watched it. I have to say I enjoyed it. It was very watchable. I enjoyed the kind of the banter element of it. I was worried that was going to go too far, but it didn't. It worked. The story just about worked. It's like a solid 7 out of 10 for me. Like a very watchable, easy to watch film, but didn't really sort of spark anything for me.
I need a catchphrase for whenever a 7 comes up.
Siete! But yeah, so I was sort of pleasantly surprised in a way. I was expecting to not like it. It came out a lot better than I expected, and frankly, as far as superhero films go, it's pretty much as good as it gets for me. You know, unless you go down like kind of a Logan way where it's not really an action film.
Okay. Calvin?
I'm very similar, actually. I only ended up watching this film because I got invited along to a free screening of it, and saying that, this one is probably one of the higher tier Marvel films for me.
It sounds like I might be the most negative one of the three then. Because, as I say, I went into this with such high expectations, and I should make it very clear I like the film. I do not dislike it, but it's the most paint-by-numbers, formulaic superhero. Like, it does nothing new. It does nothing that hasn't been done about 5 times already in the Marvel Cinematic Universe alone, let alone cinema as a whole. There are plot beats directly lifted from the Avengers or Iron Man or what have you. I was just so unimpressed when I watched it. Like I say, I liked it, but I really was hoping for more.
To be honest, it sounds like we're in the same place, but you came from above and we came from below, and so we're kind of like, oh yeah, it was all right. Yeah. And you're like, yeah, it was all right.
Well, that's true. I mean, it's a 7 out of 10 from me as well.
Siete!
But I think the difference is that for me, it's not one of Marvel's better films. It's kind of mid-level Marvel as far as I'm concerned. I would much rather watch the original Iron Man. I would much rather watch any of the Captain America movies or either of the Avengers movies. It just doesn't... I think it just has less of it is distinctly original to me at all. Like, other than it's set in space and it's got some aliens in it, and obviously I've seen that in loads of other stuff like Star Wars. You know, you could say I've seen a million World War II movies before, like Captain America, but I've never seen a World War II superhero movie that steampunks everything up in that way. So
for me, the sort of selling factor for me, the reason that I enjoyed it was the banter. You know, you got Chris Pratt there; that's what he does, and I thought everyone else sort of was in with that. That's what dragged me through, because I'm not really into superhero films, but that's more my taste. And it's not exactly like the most sparkling original wit or anything, but it was enough to kind of make me go, okay, well, this is a bit different to thing. But then, you know, like I say, I think it's becoming too much of the norm. Like Iron Man does it to a large extent, and then Deadpool's trying to be funny all the time. So I'm worried that this is setting a trend now where you've got to make these...
Well, I don't think it's setting a trend at all. Like you say, Iron Man did it. If anything, Iron Man established the kind of sarcastic, quirky superhero trope, and if anything, this is just following in its shoes. Yeah,
and Avengers is the kind of the group, the ensemble essence of that as well, where you've got a couple who are really serious and then a couple who are the jokers.
And it really frustrates me how often I see people comparing it to the Avengers. Like people always say, oh, there's going to be an Avengers Guardians of the Galaxy crossover. And it's like, no, it's just like the Guardians of the Galaxy are going to show up in the third or fourth Avengers movie, and that's inevitable. They're not on the same pegging. Just because there's like 5 or 6, however many people in the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they're a team. The joy of the Avengers is because it's like, well, it's the characters from Iron Man and the characters from the Incredible Hulk and the characters from Thor all being smushed together. And Guardians of the Galaxy is like on par with one of those. It's not the same as a whole team. It's not like the Avengers, Justice League, and Guardians of the Galaxy are on equal pegging with them. That's just silly. The cast of the film's really good. I guess we should talk about that for a little bit. So we've got John
the obvious
C.
place
Reilly,
to start would be Chris Pratt, surely.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, we go to John C. Reilly.
Well, no, I just wanted to say really.
Yeah, let's
quickly,
go to the cameos.
We've got John C. Reilly, who is probably my favourite actor.
In the worst performances ever given?
It's such a way. I heard he was going to be in the film, and I think that, again, this is part of what contributed towards me being disappointed with it. He barely does anything. And Peter Serafinowicz as well. He pops up.
No, that's the worst performance I've ever seen. Yeah, I mean, I think presumably this was filmed in England, or bits of it, because there's a few of English names just pop up for no apparent reason. But yeah, there are quite a few little cameos that I guess are setting up for the things
got
like
Glenn
Benecio del
Close
Toro,
just
Glenn Close,
popping up.
Howard the Duck.
I mean, yeah, now that I liked. That was good.
They're not actually going to do a proper Howard the Duck at any point, are they?
I very much doubt it, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up having a bit of a bigger role in a future Guardians movie down the line. But I mean, I remember joking when the deal for Lucasfilm to be acquired by Disney was announced. The first thing I went to was they can bring Howard the Duck back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Everyone else was going on about Star Wars this and Star Wars that. But for me, it was like, Howard the Duck's back. That'll be interesting. And I was only sort of joking, but so then when I saw that in the cinema, I was very happy. There's a few cameos like that for like real Marvel nerds, characters from comics who pop up in the background of the Collector's Lair, but you have to be even more into it than I am to know about them or care. Other than that dog, who I think everyone thinks is Leica, but is actually just some Marvel character. I was very disappointed to find out, because the idea that dog is Leica is a fantastic little gag, and it's not. But yeah, then the main cast. So as you say, Chris Pratt, who this is really his. I mean, this was a defining moment where pudgy supporting role in a sitcom somehow turned into an A-list actor overnight.
I mean, when you actually see the final film, it makes sense, because it's essentially a comedy role. You need someone who's got a bit of spark about them, who can improv, who can throw odd little lines out there.
It makes more sense than Hollywood usually ever does, though. This is the thing. There's so many instances where it would make sense to hire someone of that ilk for a film, and they won't do it. They hire Scarlett Johansson and then Asian her up instead. I
mean, yeah, it's a brave choice, I guess.
Yeah, and I suppose that is James Gunn at work for you there. That's the sort of thing that you get when you hire someone like that, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, you got Rainn Wilson in Super.
Yeah. Rainn, you know that part? That part in Super was written for John C. Reilly, but the studio financing it actually basically said he wasn't bankable enough. They couldn't. He wasn't a big enough name.
What, the Oscar winner John C. Reilly?
Yeah, I think he was trying to get it financed maybe about 10 years earlier, with John C. Reilly involved, and I think it was off the back of some other stuff he'd done that he then managed to get the financing, and then availability didn't line up or something. But yeah.
But yeah, no, this was a great time for Chris Pratt, because it was this, and was it the same year or next year that Jurassic World came out? And that
next year, I believe.
And that's cemented him now as...
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, I wouldn't have done Jurassic World were it not for this.
Yeah, exactly.
This was what made him acceptable.
Well, no, I saw an interview with Steven Spielberg, and they were filmed more or less at the same time. Spielberg does talk about they were really sort of unsure about whether or not it would work.
I bet you his casting had a huge impact on their having faith in him, though. I bet you it was a massive part. The fact that Marvel were taking meetings with him, and Marvel, Disney, Lucasfilm, Spielberg, it's all the same bunch of people involved. So
Oh yeah, but then Steven Spielberg wouldn't even think of Chris Pratt. But then, hey, Chris Pratt, who's going to be the big star next year because he's in that Guardians film. Yeah, then I'll look at him. But Chris Pratt, the guy in the sitcom, he wouldn't even consider him because the role in Jurassic World isn't that kind of comedy role.
He's still unproven, though.
Well, he's not unproven insofar as there's a whole wealth of material showing his ability out there. So it just kind of gets him. It gets the casting director to put him in front of Spielberg without being laughed out of the room. Spielberg watches a few episodes of Parks and Recreation that he probably hadn't even heard of otherwise and goes, yeah, this guy's got the right sort
I don't know about that. I think they probably kept that away from
You're probably right. Yeah.
They probably were like, look, he's in Moneyball. Look,
he's in Zero Dark 30. Peter Serafinowicz was in Parks and Rec. Do you think that... Have you seen that? Because he does lose all the weight. Like, it's when they were filming Guardians of the Galaxy, his character suddenly loses all the weight, and it's just brushed aside with, like, one line of dialogue, like, oh yeah, I just stopped drinking beer, and all the weight fell off. And they're like, oh, okay. And then... And then he moves to London, because, like, obviously he was filming at Pinewood, and they couldn't, like... They were like, well, we can still do a couple of episodes with him in London. So he goes to London and he's hanging out with Peter Serafinowicz. And,
really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And then they like leave him behind for a few episodes, and then
they literally just filmed it on the lunch break in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Who else is in it?
Zoe Saldana.
Yeah, I like
Avatar.
her. Again, I kind of felt like she was a bit wasted in this film. She wasn't given much opportunity to do very much, really. Other than be green.
What about that love story then? That's very subtle and well played, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why do they feel the need to do that still?
It's very annoying.
And it's not even justified in the world. It's like they barely even speak. And in fact, they sort of pretty much trying to kill each other. And then all of a sudden he's like, right, complete moral reversal. I'm changing my character to save this woman and because it means so much to me. For love.
Well, David Bowie was just playing on the soundtrack, so that's going to make anyone fall in love, isn't it?
Oh, yes, there is the soundtrack, which is
I mean, that was a big factor into the film's success. Was this eclectic jukebox soundtrack? These great hits from the 70s, 80s. Again, like I'm not that impressed with someone's ability to curate a load of great songs. I do it all the time, guys. I'm always making a playlist.
My issue with it was that it seemed a bit gimmicky, and it's like, and it worked. It got away with it. They kind of made it make sense in the narrative, just about. But yeah, it just felt a bit like, yeah.
It's a great soundtrack, but I don't know. I feel like for a lot of people that like made the film for them, and it's like, well, there's loads of films with great music.
I mean, apart from anything else, it just creates a slightly different atmosphere, a different feel, along with the kind of Peter Quill's particular character. Like we've said before, it at least creates something a little bit different.
Like I say, the fallout of it's annoying though. You can see in films like Suicide Squad where they've clearly like retroactively gone, oh, that film had some cool music. Let's just like shove a load of songs that don't fit all over the edit.
Yeah. We haven't actually talked about, I would say, the real stars of the film. Groot
Vin Diesel.
And Rocket. Yes, Vin Diesel and Bradley Cooper as the
Well, hang on, before we get to the voice actors, shall we quickly cover Dave Bautista, or however you say his name?
Oh,
who played
yes.
Drax?
Oh, yes.
So, my understanding, he was a wrestler. So, Alan, you've got a history of... you love it when a wrestler is plucked from the World Wrestling Federation, or whatever it's called.
No, I think what you've mistaken that for is I love Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I'm not saying that all wrestlers turned actors are of that quality. But it's... you want a big muscle guy for the role, and get a big muscly guy.
Oh, and quickly as well, Benicio del Toro, we've not really touched on properly. Yeah,
it's the Collector, who is going to be a big part in future installments, I understand.
I hope so, yeah, because that was probably my favourite part.
It did seem a little bit like Will Ferrell in Zoolander, like that.
But yeah, then as you say, Calvin, the two like real stars of the show are the CGI characters that aren't real. So we've got Groot, the tree alien thing, voiced by Alan's favourite Vin Diesel.
He's my favourite Vin Diesel.
But yeah, then the other one is, as we say, Bradley Cooper as Rocket Raccoon, who, out of all the casting choices, I was pretty disappointed with. Because, well, I knew there was this big, exciting raccoon character. I think at one point there was talks of Danny DeVito being courted for the role. I was expecting a real, like, a really exciting voice, you know, someone who's fun and that I like. And Bradley Cooper's a perfectly fine actor, but he's also incredibly bland, if you ask me. I really don't think there's much about him.
In terms of his voice, it didn't bring anything interesting to the part, did it?
That's
it was just
it.
Like I couldn't even necessarily told you it was Bradley Cooper. It was just this kind of male voice. But having said that, his performance is good, and I think Bradley Cooper is a good actor, and that comes across. It's just not a particularly interesting voice.
And his performance as Rocket is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But I want someone like Danny DeVito playing that role who's got a funny voice. So,
yeah, but he can't just be funny. He's got to be a badass as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, but Danny DeVito's like a great actor as well. Let's not forget. I'm not saying just get someone.
It's not a slight against Danny DeVito, but it's, you know.
All right, well, I just mean there's so many people with really interesting voices who, I don't know, it felt like modern guest stars on The Simpsons when you just think, ugh, this guy's not suited to animation at all. Get someone like who is, get a, I don't know. Who would you cast as Rocket Raccoon?
I think Kelsey Grammer would do it.
Now that would actually be pretty good. Like, genuinely, if you could get him to play the badass moments at the right level, which I think he probably could. I mean, maybe he's a bit too upper class, and Rocket's meant to be a bit more from the streets. But you know, I'd cast as Rocket Raccoon. Actually, no, you know what? I would cast this guy as Groot.
Oh,
Werner Herzog.
Yes,
I am Groot.
But those two characters make it, don't they? Like, those two characters are great and funny.
They're the heart and soul of the film. Although I didn't like the, I'm gonna sacrifice myself to save everyone at the end. Oh no, he's dead. Oh, is he dead? Oh no, he's obviously still alive. It's like... Ugh.
And they've really embraced that. Like, he's not fully grown for the next film. Like, it is Baby Groot. They call him Little Baby Groot.
And I'm really annoyed with how... Because apparently when he does that, he loses his memory. So Baby Groot is him without his memory, which just seems completely pointless. If they said this isn't Groot, it's like an offshoot grown from Groot's body, like a bud that we've...
Yeah, it's Groot's child.
Yeah, if that was how they were playing it, then alright, I could get behind that. That would mean like he actually did legitimately sacrifice himself and stuff like that. But apparently it's Groot, but he's just lost his memory, and there's a slight implication that he might regain his memory down the line, and it all just seems a bit...
Now, what will happen is... Because the raccoon took one like twig and replanted it, and he's grown a new Groot.
At the end, there's going to be...
So what's going to happen later on down the line? There's going to be like thousands, a Groot army.
Yeah, baby Groot army that will save the day. Yeah, you're probably right.
But the villain gathered up the twigs, grew a Groot army, and then but then at the end they gain all the memories and they go, oh yeah, Rocky Raccoon, you're our friend. Groot, I am Groot.
And he says we are Groot again. Yeah.
Yeah, we are Groot. They become Legion. They're one.
Yeah.
That's it. That's my prediction. Yeah. Shall we do our pictures then?
I guess so, yeah.
I'm just going to nip to the loo quickly. I'll just be 5 minutes. Well, not even that.
Not even that. It's hard when it's like something so driven by what the characters do, and you can't just say Guardians of the Galaxy in space or anything like that. So
my film, my Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, would begin in space, and there's a big spaceship battle thing happening. We see Star-Lord and his band of the Groot and the Raccoon and what are the other ones? Gamora and
Sodom
and Drax. And there's a big fight, and it's all very exciting, and it's against a villain, and blah blah. Everything's getting blown up, and it's really cool and stuff. And on the ground, Glenn Close as Nova Prime is directing them. Her and Peter Quill, Star-Lord, Chris Pratt, they get into a bit of a argument about something that he wants to do, and then she's saying, "No, do this," and then she's like, "No, do this," and he's like, "No, I don't play by the rule books," or whatever, and he goes and he does his thing, and he wins. And that's the end of the battle. Very exciting opening 10 minutes. And they all come back down. And he has a private meeting with Nova Prime, who's really pissed off that he's... tells him off, "Oh, you should have been listening to me," and all that kind of stuff. And Star-Lord's like, "Oh, God, how do I get out of this? She's going to, like, suspend me or something." So he's like... Hey.
Oh, wait, is this turning into James Bond? Where he's getting told off by M?
Well, it kind of is. I mean, she's pretty
playing
much
by the rules. This is where your mind naturally goes to this place, doesn't it, Calvin?
I mean, I go a very different way from it. I don't know. I'm just dealing with what I've got here, which is a wisecracking hero and a woman, like, finger wagging at him.
What about Chris Pratt as the next Bond, Calvin? How would you feel about that?
No.
No.
What?
No.
Why not?
No.
What's wrong with that? Why not?
Nah.
Like a wisecracking Bond.
No, he's too. I think he's a bit too sort of thick for it. Like just like body shape is too.
Hey, you can
thick.
lose the weight.
Well, as
We've
opposed
seen
to
that.
Daniel
You can-
Craig.
You can drop.
No,
you can
no,
slim
no, I
down
think
and
it's just his
fatten
frame,
up
like-
at the drop of a hat. He's like Jonah Hill.
Yeah. How would you feel about a fat Bond?
It's time for some real inclusiveness, isn't it?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah. Right. Anyway, so he's getting a telling off. And she's like, "Oh, don't do it." But he thinks, "Oh God, how am I going to get this right? I'll turn on the old Star-Lord charm." So he like starts flirting with her a little bit, and he's like, "Oh, should we go out for a dinner or something?" And she's like, "Oh, yes, we shall." And so they go out for dinner, and they have a really nice date, and it's really nice. And they're about to leave, and Chris Pratt's thinking like, "Oh, great, I've got out of this." And then he sort of like, he tries to friend zone her, but she reacts kind of badly to it. So he's like, "Oh, no, it's fine. We'll go on a second date. It's fine. Anyway, they have a little montage here as they end up going on dates over and over and over again. And eventually he ends up in bed with her, and they begin a relationship. This is all while are they girlfriend, him and Sodom, or whatever her name is, what's her name? Gamora, that's the one. Their boyfriend. Well, she can be sort of like, "Oh, where have you been, like, tonight and stuff?" "Oh no, I've just been out with the lads." And actually he's been out with Nova, and they've been having relations and that sort of thing. And so he gets a bit jealous, and he's coming back, and he's like, "Oh, I can smell something on you. Who is that? You know, what's that perfume?" And he's got to come up with excuses for it and stuff. So eventually it all gets a bit out of hand, and he goes to Nova Prime, and he has to be like, "All right, love, I'm sorry, I need to call this off." And she reacts really badly to it. She's like, "What are you do? No, you can't do this to me," and all that kind of stuff. And she starts going,
Oh no!
Mad.
Oh God! Can I make a prediction where you're going with this?
Yes.
Does Rocky Raccoon get boiled in a pan?
You have seen the connection that I've made with Glenn Close's filmography. And, we have tense scenes as like Nova Prime is stalking Star-Lord and Gamora around the space base or whatever it is, and she's like sending, threatening emails and leaving like bags of poo and then lighting them on fire in front of their door and running away.
Is she preparing for a role as the Joker?
Yeah, so it's all getting very tense, and it all comes to a climax when Star-Lord comes home and he sees that the door's been broken down. Oh my God, what's going on? He walks in, and there's a couple of pans boiling on the hob. And he goes to one, and he lifts up the lid, and he sees there's Groot in there, and he screams, and it's like, "Oh no, what's happening?" And then Nova Prime comes rushing in, and she's like, what? And he's like, "You've boiled Groot," and she's like, No, that's just bay leaves. I'm just preparing a nice dinner for us. And he's like, "Oh, phew, oh." Good. Oh, I'm so happy about that. What are you cooking? And then she lifts up the other pan, and it's Rocket the Raccoon is in it, and she's like, "Raccoon and bay leaves." And then he's like, "Oh no!"
How big are these pans?
They're massive. And then there's a fight, and Gamora comes back, and she's like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And They have to have a conversation, and
Oh
eventually,
god, a conversation.
and eventually Nova Prime is, I can't remember Fatal Attraction very well, but she ends up in a bath and she gets shot, and that's the end of the film.
Wow. I think if you're going to do that, Calvin, you need to really embrace this. So you need to pull in other characters. So like you could have, John C. Reilly as one of his previous characters.
I thought you were going to say Glenn Close characters specifically. So Cruella de Vil shows up.
Cruella de Vil.
Yeah, no, but like you have like Wreck-It Ralph turns up. He's trying to fix the sink.
I'm gonna wreck it.
While she's boiling the.
What,
raccoon.
like, what's her name? What's her name from Parks and Rec? She can turn up and she can be like doing some intergalactic
Which one?
park. The main one. What's her name? Tina Fey's
Amy Poehler.
Amy Poehler. That's it. She can come in and do something.
Get Aubrey Plaza in because she was Chris Pratt's love interest in Parks and
that'd
Rec,
work.
so they can go toe to toe about
That'd work.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Groot like gets in the car and drives really fast.
And Zoe Saldana. So Chris Pine can turn up as Captain Kirk because he's into green women, and he can be like, "Uhura, you're green." And Vin Diesel, the Iron Giant, can turn up and just hang out with Groot, and they can say one word back and forth at each other.
Family good.
When Nova Prime is like boiling the raccoon and they're having a big fight or whatever, Peter Serafinowicz can come down and he's like, "Can you keep the funky noise down? I've got to go to work tomorrow." And he's like, "What a prick." Then they nick his car.
Cruella de Vil can be trying to steal Rocket Raccoon to make a necklace or something.
Making a mink coat, but a raccoon coat.
101 raccoons.
And Benicio del Toro as the Collector can just be like farting in a lineup with everyone, like in the trailer for Guardians of the Galaxy. He's just farting and they're all laughing at him. Is that one lost on you?
Does that happen in The Usual Suspects? Does someone fart?
When they were filming it, Benicio del Toro is just like cutting one every like 10 seconds. And
Oh, was he?
That's why everyone was laughing. It was meant to be like a really serious scene, and he kept farting, and it just ended up being this like jokey banter.
Well, I know that scene. Like they ended up having a lot of laughs about it and kind of improvised a lot of it. And
It's because Benicio del Toro was farting. Yeah.
Give me a kiss, fucking cocksucker.
Yeah, so here we are. Kevin Pollak said that they were all laughing and stuff because Benicio del Toro quotes farted like 12 takes in a row. Del Toro himself said, quotes, "Somebody farted, but no one knew who." So there you go. Windy Del Toro there.
Right, so what do you guys have for your pictures?
Okay, it's a spin-off about the Collector, so that's already a good start.
Okay.
He gets a visit from Thanos' mate, who's played by the knockoff Giles from Buffy and Angel, if you've watched that.
Anthony Head?
The knockoff Giles.
Yeah, there's a knockoff Anthony Head who comes in partway through, played by, I think he's called Alexis Denzinoff or something.
Oh, okay.
And he's like the replacement Giles, but he's not as good. And then he became a big part in the spin-off Angel, and he's actually a really good little character. And yeah, he comes knocking. I should add, he plays the guy's mate in like the films. Whenever you see that little guy in, I think it's the Avengers up on a space rock.
What are you talking about?
Oh.
Do you remember all that in the Avengers? There's some guy in like an alien on a meteor or something. Well, basically this guy plays this character who hangs around with Thanos in these movies. I've not just
Anthony Head.
No, he's knockoff Anthony Head. He's like bargain bin Anthony Head. Alexis Denisov or whatever he's called.
Okay then.
So he comes knocking anyway. He's looking for some Infinity Gems, and they end up with a big fight, defending all the pieces that the Collector already owns. But after he defeats the guy, he finds there's a map on him, and find that there's another Infinity Gem on this distant inhospitable planet.
Ah.
So Howard the Duck, who's now free because his case got smashed in the fight. What's wrong with Howard the Duck?
No, it's fine. I've never actually seen the film.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of the film Howard the Duck.
Just the concept.
I'm a duck superhero.
Howard the Duck plays quite a big part in the Army of Darkness versus Marvel Zombies comic series. It's quite a big part in that. It's good.
Sounds good, that. I'll have to check that out.
Howard the Duck, so he's now free. His case got all smashed up in the fight. He convinces the Collector that he should come along and help. So the two of them embark on an Indiana Jones adventure, playing into how the opening scene of Guardians is very clearly inspired by Raiders. Then we've just got a series of action set pieces, finding clues leading from one to the other on this planet. There's bits of the planet like Venice, bits like volcanic temples, bits like ice deserts. You know, just all the locations you want to see, really. Like in Mario Kart, you just kind of tick off, you know.
Rainbow Road.
Wario Woods. and anyway, then at the end, maybe the Guardians like show up or something, because they're looking for the same thing, and they realise they're being chased by the bald woman from Doctor Who. So they decide to work together rather than against each other.
There's a lot of that goes on in these films.
Yeah. They ultimately make it back to the Collector's lair, having got the gem and had a big action fight and everything. And then he traps them all in boxes and puts them on display as the Guardians of the Galaxy. Ooh. And then the camera pulls back, and you guess who else he's collected, guys?
The X-Men.
No.
Oh.
Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, Captain America, all the Avengers. And then he says something like "assembled" and walks off, something like shit like that. And then that sets up the next Avengers movie, which is going to be a Great Escape prison break film. Movie. Yeah, Prison Break. Brilliant. I think that idea would be good because you're focusing in on another two colourful characters who I wanted more screen time from. I think all the fans of the first film who really loved it would probably be disappointed to not have the not have the characters they were invested in returning till the very end. Whatever. Don't care.
Put all their bits in the trailer and it'll sell.
Yeah, exactly. Alan, what's your idea?
It was an awkward one to find something for this. I struggled with it for quite a while, and basically in the end I went just kind of conceptual with it, just throw a kind of a different condition on there and see if it created anything interesting. So
Dogma 95?
Actually, that would be really good. What I decided was, and I think it was from watching the film, because there's that, like, the precursor is set in the 80s, and it has that kind of, because of the music, it has that kind of feel to it. I thought, what would this film have been like if it had been made 30 years ago? Now, I appreciate the characters didn't exist and all that, but that's not the point. It's just a thought experiment. Imagine, if you will, it's 1987.
Okay.
So Star Wars is done, and they're looking for, like, new... Well, Star Wars ripoffs, basically. So that's what this is. So completely different conditions. You can't do your CGI like you can now. So most of the aliens and everything would be puppets. So your first call is to Jim Henson, because you need him to create Rocky Raccoon and Groot, specifically. But then all your other aliens as well. Do you know Labyrinth?
The David Bowie film?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's my reference point for Rocky Raccoon is the little knight.
Are you saying Rocky or Rocket?
He's one of the Rockettes.
Because I think you were saying Rocky, and it's Rocket.
Rocky Raccoon, yeah.
No, it's Rocket.
Rocky.
Rocket.
No, I don't think they call him Rocket. That's a ridiculous name.
No, but that's his name.
He's named after a lettuce. Anyway, so
Calvin, he's fucking with you, Calvin.
Oh right, I thought
he's doing it on purpose. It's fine.
I was taking it all very seriously.
Okay, so in Labyrinth, there's this little, like, knight who's a fox or something, and he rides a dog.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
So anyway, that's my reference point for Rocky Raccoon because he's like a little rodent-y raccoon thing. So he's going to look like that. You got to think of casting here. So,
well, obviously David Bowie is the collector right away.
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm all right like that. Rocket Raccoon is one of the ones I actually want to change character.
Rocky.
Oh,
Rocky.
yes. Okay, so I want to change his character a little bit.
Stallone.
Yeah. My character change for him is I want to make him a little bit more kind of neurotic and kind of, he's still pretty kind of messed up because he's
Woody
a
Allen?
weird genetically created freak. You're not far off. You're in the right sort of area. But also I think it would suit the character because essentially what he becomes in the film is like the tech guy, isn't he? He's like the nerdy, he can put anything together kind of guy.
Yeah.
So it would work. No, come on. I've got an idea with he's not the big strong character. He's the brainy one, and but he's a bit more Woody Allen-esque, I suppose. More of a worrier than a warrior. So I'm thinking 1980, 1987, that sort of era. Who would you get to voice that character?
David Hyde Pierce?
No, I've gone with Rick Moranis.
Oh,
yes.
yes, of course. Perfect. Hey, can we get John Candy to play Star-Lord and just get him to slim down?
For Groot, it's pretty simple. What you just get a really big guy and
Frank Oz.
Strap some wood to him and make him really go. You could get Frank Oz doing the voice, maybe. You need a really skilled actor to portray that kind of emotion. For the actual physical of Groot, I've got the perfect person. I don't know if you'd know who he is. He's not an actor. Back in the 80s, there was a basketball player named Manute Bol. He was very famous because he was the tallest ever professional basketball player. He was 7'7". He's not just tall, but he's also freakishly thin, and his limbs were his arm span was 8'6". He had just these freakishly long limbs. I think it'd be perfect. You put a load of wood on him. Honestly, Google image this guy because you've never seen anything like it. Manute.
So he looks normal there. That's just his face.
Jiminy Cricket, my God,
Oh, wow.
He's huge.
But it's not just that he's big, isn't it? It's those weird, spider legs he's got. It's freakish, isn't it? So imagine that.
If he was on all fours, that would be terrifying.
So imagine him with wood prosthetics attached to him.
Yeah.
Going, I am Groot.
You know, just on a quick side note, right? You know how Groot says, I am Groot?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So he obviously learnt those 3 words in English.
Yes.
And then he just stopped. What's that about? And he learns we are Groot, so he understands grammar. But he's an alien. Presumably he speaks alien tree language, all right? I'm going to assume. So
But no, because
he learns 3 words in English, and then he just doesn't bother trying to. There should be loads of scenes where Rocket Raccoon's working on him, and they're learning language. And is there a scene?
You see, Sol, you've got it wrong. You've got it all the way around wrong. Because when he says I am Groot, the raccoon understands him completely as a different language. So obviously, what his language is the words I am Groot, but said in a different intonation to mean many different things. And that just happens to sound in English like I am Groot. That's why they call him Groot. His name's not really Groot.
Apart
it's
from
just
the one
these
time
words.
when he says we are Groot.
Well, exactly, but that means something else.
It's just a phenomenal coincidence.
Yeah.
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 That is astounding, actually. But you're right. So, remember when Sooty would just kind of talk in the guy's ear?
Yes.
Is that the same thing? No, he was just talking very quietly, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's just shy.
Okay, no, yeah, fair enough. It's a very complex language of... Yeah, no, you're right.
Why the hell could Sue talk?
You went to Sooty but not Sweep, who actually does just talk in a mindless noise language.
You know what always really freaked me out as a kid? And this will bring us back to your labyrinth pitch. Is when you'd see Sooty and Sweep's legs.
Oh yeah.
Now it wasn't that unnerving. There'd be a camera shot of just these puppet legs, walking along. And, oh.
Well, it's always how if they do actually have legs like that, then how do they? Because they're always behind a desk or a cabinet or something. Presumably there's a little platform there or something. Because humans are stood behind it and it only goes up to their waist. So it's how the hell? Either they've got incredibly long legs or there's some kind of pulley system that they have.
Like Manute Bol. So are we going to see Rocket Raccoon's legs in your pitch, Alan?
Only in a very awkward way. Where you occasionally just see him like climbing onto a chair or something.
Or like when you see Kermit riding a bike in the Muppet movie.
Now, the other change obviously we're going to have to make is that if this is set in the 80s, then the young Peter Quill would have had to have been abducted much earlier. Now, I'm going to time slip it slightly and make it the late 60s rather than, say, the 50s, because that will give us a better soundtrack. And he can have like a little portable record player that he drags around with him all the place. But yeah, it means you get the 60s soundtrack. It's pretty cool.
What sort of songs are you looking at here? Beatles? Rolling Stones?
You got to mix it up, haven't you? A bit of Motown. Whatever fits the...
You could have the original version of Hooked on a Feeling, which was released in the 60s before they covered it for the version used in the film.
Bit of Elvis, maybe, something like that.
Well, now it's just getting into Lilo and Stitch territory. You want to avoid that. Although this would be made first, so they'd be ripping you off. It's all right. So Peter Quill, you're going to get someone from a sitcom, presumably? 80s sitcom?
No. Bear in mind you're thinking this is... But bear in mind this is just a Star Wars ripoff. So what we need is a Harrison Ford ripoff. So who's the new Harrison Ford of the 80s, or should have been? Okay, I'll go with Dennis Quaid. He should have been the new Harrison Ford. I don't know where it all went wrong.
Yeah.
But at this point, like in the 80s, I mean, he was hot off of Jaws 3D, so he would have been a big name. We could have...
I don't think anyone was hot off Jaws 3D.
Who's playing Zoe Saldana's role then?
Well, I don't know about that because I don't really know. I don't really do women. I'm not really that good with the women. So
Margot Kidder.
Who was like the young up-and-comer of the 80s?
Glenn Close.
Oh, what about Leah Thompson?
I don't know about that. She's got more of a motherly.
Howard the Duck gives her a blowjob in Howard the Duck. Sorry, not a blowjob. Howard the Duck. She gives Howard the Duck a blowjob. That would be
ridiculous.
I was thinking he eats her out, but that'd be. I mean, imagine a duck doing that with its beak. Ugh.
Oh my god.
There's like a scene when they go smashing through someone's apartment or something, and there's just like a duck woman in the bath, and she goes, "Oh!" and she's got like duck boobs with nipples and everything. It's really weird. Anyway, family film.
Yeah, I know it should be Phoebe Cates.
Who's that?
She's the girl from Gremlins.
And because I was thinking this film would be directed by Joe Dante, like off the back of Gremlins, like he would have. This is sort of the next step. But I've got one more casting, of course. The one. It's the 80s. Who are you going to get to play Drax? Come on. I think this one's obvious.
Arnie?
Arnold Schwarzenegger. Come on.
Oh, yeah. Of course, yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, perfect. He's got the look. He's got the inability to act. He's got the kind of not quite human comprehension of language. It's perfect. So anyway, that's pretty much my idea. Just do it with puppets.
Well, that was Guardians of the Galaxy. At the start of this year, we did a trilogy of episodes covering the work of M. Night Shyamalan. We're doing something similar starting next week with another new trilogy of episodes covering one topic in great depth. So you have that to look forward to. If you are Peter Quill, you may want to consider adding a few episodes of Diminishing Returns to Awesome Mix Volume 3. And for the rest of you, help spread the love, as always. Alright, thanks, bye! So, Alan, apparently when Dave Bautista found out he got the role of Drax, he broke down in tears, overjoyed at getting a Marvel comic book role, and immediately signed up for acting classes to prepare.
I love it. Sign up for acting classes after you've got a role in a multi-million-dollar budget feature film franchise. Yeah, good work. I wonder when he decided to cancel them and not bother acting at all.
Ooh, shots fired.
He does alright, doesn't he? For what he's has to do.
That was a very quick U-turn. Is it because he's so big that you don't want to fight him?
Yeah, I'm worried he might come down and smack my face.